Jennings. We'll come back to him. He is online. Councilmember Chenier.
Here.
Councilmember Vang.
Here.
Mayor Steinberg.
I'm here.
And Councilmember Jennings. I do show him online.
Okay.
Councilmember Jennings.
You might be on mute, huh?
Councilmember Jennings, we've called the meeting to order. And Councilmember Jennings is present virtually.
Okay, thank you so much. Today I'd like to lead with our land acknowledgement, and Kelly Rivas, would you do the honor of helping us with the Pledge of Allegiance? Please rise for the opening acknowledgement in honor of Sacramento's indigenous peoples and tribal lands. To the original people of this land, the Nisenan people, the Southern Maidu, Valley and Plains Miwok, Patwin and Wintu's peoples, and the people of Wilton Rancheria, Sacramento's only federally recognized tribe. May we acknowledge and honor the Native people who came before us and still walk beside us today on these ancestral lands by choosing to gather today in the active practice of acknowledgement and appreciation for Sacramento's indigenous peoples, history, contribution, and lives.
Thank you. Please stay standing for the pledge. Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome everyone and happy Tuesday. Today we have 3 items for discussion, starting with an update from our staff and our partners from the Racial Equity Alliance and the status on our Racial Equity Council. But before we begin the discussion items, we do have 1 item on consent. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
Councilmember Vang, I have no hands raised to make comment on this item.
Okay. Would any of my colleagues like to move this item?
I'll move it.
Moved by Mayor Steinberg.
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Chenier. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Councilmember Jennings.
Yes.
Councilmember Chenier.
Aye.
Councilmember Vang.
Yes.
And Mayor Steinberg.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. So next on the agenda is an update from city staff on Race Forward and the status on the Racial Equity Council regarding the SCORE initiative. I believe we have someone, is it D'Angelo on the line that will be presenting? Kelly, is that correct?
I see he's on as an attendee, but hasn't yet been promoted to panelist.
Okay.
Coming in now.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Hi, D'Angelo. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone, council, mayor, staff. It's good to be with you today. Wanted to just give a update on the Racial Equity Network and the work that we've been doing. Today, I actually have some partners here with me in Ryan McClinton and Nia Moreweathers, and we just want to give you an overview of our previous retreat, which happened last month. Talk a little bit about the trust building and truth telling workshop that you all will be attending and going through, as well as more of our ideas around how the committee can support, and then hopefully open it up for questions. I just want to first of all start by saying our team is really grateful to do this work. Most of us, this work isn't just work, it's our lives. Racial equity is something that we've been trying to achieve since we came out of the womb. And so with that said, I am an older guy. I'm not my young, spry self anymore. And just want to point out that racial equity through authentic partnership will take some strategic time. And so I definitely want to pass the mic to Ryan McClinton. He's just going to share a little bit of what we discussed kind of high level in our retreat and then move forward. Ryan?
Thank you, D'Angelo, and good morning to everybody. It's great to see many of you. Definitely want to give a major shout out to our Racial Equity Alliance as well as our Racial Equity Council, which I'll share a little bit of some of the things we were able to talk about over our 2-day retreat. Really, a lot of our time was spent focused on thinking about strategically, what are we building for transformative change? All of us in our various individual capacities, as well as the organizations we work with, have done a great deal of significant work pushing towards racial equity in various phases and iterations. Yet we recognize, as D'Angelo just lifted up, that for this to truly happen, for it to truly be transformative like we're hoping for, it's going to take deep collaboration and intentionality and strategic thinking around what can we really do to build a framework that's sustainable beyond any moment, right? Beyond the life cycle of any particular elected body or anybody holding positions similar to what we hold as this current version of the Racial Equity Alliance. We spent a great deal of time really digging at deeply, what does that change look like? What does that transformation look like? What are the things that we'll need to do, not only as an alliance, but in the communication with the committee, as well as our Racial Equity Council, to continue to make sure that those marginalized communities not only have agency, but truly are put at the forefront of every city decision that's made going forward, right? How do we make sure that the governance of our local region embodies racial equity across every decision? That's our starting point versus the back end piece, or we're catching up at the margins to try to rebuild back towards. We had some great, really deep dive discussion around what has worked and what hasn't, what are some of those challenges that came up, but also, again, what are the things that we can imagine doing differently in partnership with you all? Again, we had the conversation over 2 days, and our Racial Equity Council was able to join for some of day 2, but I definitely want to give space to D'Angelo or Mia to share additional reflections from that time, as well, as it was a really robust time that we had together. And I think gave us some really good momentum as we come forward even to today. D'Angelo, Mia, is there a piece that you guys wanted to share at all?
If I could come off of mute really quickly, I would just share that the retreat was such a warm and loving space for all of our Alliance members to need. And I really also want to uplift Race Forward in this conversation, because that retreat would not have been possible without Race Forward's help, without Race Forward's guidance. So, spending intentional time and building relationships is one of the ways that our Racial Equity Alliance has identified that we can continue to build past and build over white supremacy culture. And so I would just highlight that for us all too, meeting in person, spending time together, getting to know one another, and just breathing and talking is also extremely important to this whole entire healing process that is working on racial equity. So just uplifting that as well.
Am I the only one that's hearing the background information noise?
No, I think Nia's in a space that might have some.
Okay. Okay. I just didn't know where that was coming from.
Thank you, and thank you for that as well, Nia. Definitely want to uplift the great work and partnership that Race Forward has been throughout this entire process, from its inception to now, and as we continue to move forward. I think that retreat space was beautifully crafted with their leaning in and building that community with us. And again, I want to give D'Angelo a chance to share before we move forward on our agenda. D'Angelo, is there any piece that you want to add on?
Yeah, just something that continued to bubble up to the top, and that was that this actual body, for all that are listening, we were known as the Racial Equity Network, Leadership Network. The name was a little tricky with all the Racial Equity Network and committee. So we changed during the committee. You will hear us reference the Racial Equity Alliance, and the Alliance is the body that oversees the Racial Equity Council, which I apologize, I was supposed to lift up at the beginning, and will be the Racial Equity Committee. That's you all, your point of contact for the Racial Equity Council. And so the Racial Equity Council has been developed and is currently meeting, and that membership stands at 14 members. We had the privilege of reaching out and talking to Councilmember Shanier's office. We talked to the mayor, as well as some staff members, and have sent out the information on who the council is, as well as who the alliance makeup is as well. And so I say all that to say, one of the great things that came out of the retreat is that we would love to do things differently. We know that these bodies have been created in the past and have not necessarily had the power and the privilege to go forward in the work scope given with much teeth. And so we, for our team, have decided to work as a unit. So when we are approaching meetings like this and key decisions, that'll be made in a collective manner by the Alliance. As a matter of fact, today we have a good number of Alliance members that are on the call today. So very thankful for them to being here. But we just want to do things differently, and we'll talk a little bit more about why during the trust building portion. I'll give it back to Lorraine. Or were you finished, right?
No, I saw that Jay had a hand raised as well.
Yeah, just if I could you clarify for me and for others, the roles and responsibilities, the difference between the Alliance and the Council? I'm a little confused on that.
Sure thing. So the Alliance is the overarching body that governs the Council. The Council will be working very closely with you all on key initiatives and agendas, such as the Racial Equity Resolution, which is something that I know you all will be looking to develop, as well as the SCORE and around the trust building and truth telling exercises. The Racial Council as well are more of the movement or the feet of this work. And so they'll carry out certain asks that we have of the committee to present to council. They also will develop certain recommendations around racial equity that they'll present to you all. And they are truly, really community-based individuals, whereas most of the Alliance sits in this position through organizations as well. So that is the difference. The Alliance basically governs the council and is your point of contact to meet and ask questions.
Okay, cover your question, Jay? Awesome. Well, yeah, I'd just like to close this piece with really, again, echoing a lot of what you heard, that the real focus of this retreat was making sure that we have a clear direction in where we're going, but also how we continue to operate as a body and build this work out sustainably for the future. Again, D'Angelo lifted up, we have a number of our Alliance members on the call, and this will always be a collective effort as we continue to move forward. I'm going to pass it over to D'Angelo because we have a section that we're going to cover a little bit more about some of the content that we discussed, but also some of the direction that we definitely would like to start in as we continue to build this work with you all. D'Angelo?
Sure thing. And so just wanted to briefly talk a little bit about the truth telling and trust building portion of the work. It's a part of the assigned scope of work that you all designed, that we designed, and you all have agreed upon with Race Forward. Just wanted to let you know where we are regarding that. The process for the truth telling and trust building will begin in the next couple of weeks. Race Forward will be in contact with you all to basically schedule time to begin this. And truthfully, what this is, you all know that there has been some um, very disturbing history here in this country, as well as this city. And in order to move any agenda forward, and specifically talking about racial equity, there has to be acknowledgement first of the past and the history in this city, and then there needs to be trust building. There's a staff member, Kelly, that often says we need to move at the speed of trust. And one of the things that continued to bubble to the top as we met in the retreat, as we met with community members, there has been a break in the trust between community and local officials, right? And we believe that there can be a collective partnership, an authentic, collective, sincere partnership between the city council and community. But before that can happen, these issues of history have to be addressed. And we need to really talk about the healing process and what that looks like, have some deep, honest dialogue, and then really talk about how we build power with our community, right? There has been many occasions where folks on the council has spoken that you work for the community, but at times that does not look like the case. And so we want to really talk about what shifting power looks like to make Sacramento a better place. One of those areas of shifting power and that beginning of really telling truth is something that we'd love to discuss. Our friend Nia Moreweathers will discuss around clear communication around that history. So I'll hand the mic to Nia, and Nia, if you would like to share, that'd be great.
And thanks so much, y'all. Apologies for the background noise. I am at a cafe right now, so if you hear any clinking or clattering, that's what's going on. People just working. Again, my name.
I'm sorry. I mean, I'm just having a hard time hearing, and I want to listen carefully. I'm just having a difficult time, and I think I did the right.
Can you hear me now, Mayor?
I can hear you. It's just like it's in a cave a little bit here. So.
Okay, hold on 2 seconds, everyone.
Okay. It may be on our end. It's okay. I just a little
Councilmember Jennings, how's the sound on your side?
You're better now. Angela, I'm hearing you better now than I did previous.
Okay.
Okay, let's keep trying. I apologize. I just want to be able to take it in.
Okay, I think we're good. Nia, you want to try one more time?
Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
much
that's
better.
much better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Glad I was able to fix that for us. So my name's Nia Moreweathers. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a community organizer with Youth Forward locally here in Sacramento, but I am also a very proud representative of the Sacramento Racial Equity Alliance. And I appreciate D'Angelo and Ryan kind of setting us up here for this conversation around what it looks like to form a collaboration and to form something that's intentional. And like I said, I appreciate D'Angelo kind of starting us off on that conversation and acknowledging that some of that looks like trust building and truth telling. One of the things that I think is really apparent when we talk about building racial equity policy and building out, hold on just a second, Gall, a truck.
Nia, are you okay? Just
I
want to
can
make.
hear you.
Oh, yeah, I think she says hold on real quick.
I'm fine. It's a big trash truck. going. I didn't want us interrupted. So I was saying, one of the things that's important about this racial equity process is truth telling and trust building. And part of that is being uncomfortable. I think I remember a conversation that we had with the mayor last year when we were starting to form this racial equity network. And I remember you, Mr. Mayor, speaking about how some of these topics are uncomfortable for us to address. I think the reason why it's uncomfortable is because there is an acknowledgement within ourselves, whether that is the spirit, the objective, or the personal, that something wrong has occurred, right? That somebody or some people have been treated poorly. And so one of the ways that I know that we can begin to address that hurt and address that trauma is through an intentional apology. When I was young and I was coming up on the playground, if you pushed another kid down, the yard duty would come over to you and ask that person to apologize. Sometimes you were forced to hug another individual. Sometimes you were forced to get in line behind that person later on in the day, and it might have been uncomfortable, but you had to rock with that feeling. So I think one of the things that we had discussed at the retreat was how do we, formulate a moment like that between the community and the city. And what we've landed on and what you all have heard me talk about, I'm sure multiple times throughout the past year or so, is formalizing an apology that comes from the city, and a formal apology supported by an action plan as to how we fix that. I think one of the key features of an apology is admitting wrongdoing. That's important because it acknowledges the hurt that the other party has felt. So when we're talking about an apology from the city, what we would like is an acknowledgement of the historical wrongs that not necessarily this city council has done, but all city councils have performed, right? All of our local Sacramento government. And this is a really important key piece that the Racial Equity Alliance has identified, right? Because if we want to form an actual collaboration, we're going to need trust. Our community members right now aren't at a place where they feel like they trust the city to do some of the things that they say they're going to be doing with this racial equity work. And so starting with the formal apology that's followed by a planned action plan is going to help us do that. I think part of that action plan looks like doing some data collection and doing some direct outreach to communities who have been most impacted by racism, the war on drugs, lack of affordable housing, homelessness, and a variety of other policy issues that have impacted BIPOC communities here in Sacramento. But I think something else that I have discussed in the past with folks is doing some sort of press conference, getting the media and eyes on this. Some people aren't going to be reached by a community discussion. Some people aren't going to answer that invitation. So pushing out this apology to every single available source to let people know that we are reaching out in the interest of trying to heal versus the interest of trying to harm. And so this is one idea that came out of that retreat that we're all really excited about and that we would like to move forward and push. Again, with the idea of starting this trust building and truth telling process. I hope that's helpful, and I'd love to be able to answer any questions. Again, I apologize for some of the background noise and inconsistency video issues that we've had in this particular moment.
Thank you, Nia. We just want to finish by saying we are excited to start the work with you all and look forward to meeting. We've already started meeting individually. We know that you all are bound by the Brown Act and may not be able to come together collectively, but would love to talk to you or your staff about how we can have some regular meetings on schedule so that we can begin to truly move on some of these initiatives that we have in mind. That concludes our presentation. We want to open the floor for questions or comments. And just again, thank you all.
Thank you, D'Angelo, Ryan, and Nia. Really appreciate your presentation. I believe I do have some questions and comments from my colleagues. I also have some follow-up questions as well. So we'll start with Mayor Steinberg.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. D'Angelo, Nia and Ryan, thank you very, very much for good presentation. And thank you to all the Equity Alliance members and the council members for dedicating so much time and genuine commitment to this crucial issue. So in terms of an apology, I can say as mayor of the city, I have no problem with the city apologizing for historic redlining, for historic disinvestment, for the war, our part in the war on drugs, for overt discrimination that is part of our city's past, just as it unfortunately is part of the past of too many parts of our state and our country. But I do think you're wise in terms of linking an apology to an actual action plan, because an apology, we know apologies, we see it in the political context all the time where politicians apologize for different things, and it's, you know, sometimes genuine and sometimes intended to get to the next news cycle. And what really matters is what the follow through and the follow up is. And so it's on that piece that I just want to continue. And I know this, we dance around this all the time. And so I kind of come back to it, which is that going at the speed of trust is right. What you're doing to really work on developing the coalition from the ground up is right. Building the relationships and changing the culture is right. And yet, I know it is my own life experience that trust is also built by being in the so-called foxhole together, where you're in battle around and over an issue or a set of priorities or an initiative, and trust is built by actually doing. And so what is that action plan that is not going to be everything at once, because it can't be, but will demonstrate that we can translate the good intentions into tangible action? And so I look at the staff report here, and again, I was having a little trouble hearing at the beginning, D'Angelo and Ryan, so I may have missed it. And if I did, I apologize. But the staff report here, the description and analysis leads with the SCORE process. And it describes how our team, together with the community, developed the interim racial equity rapid response for the American Rescue Plan. And I think that was good. I mean, that was a very important start. But now we have, you know, a mid-year budget. Don't know if we're going to have money. Looking at Laney. And then we're going to have the 20, what year is this? The 23-24 budget coming up in July. These are going to be big opportunities. And, you know, God forbid we are in cut mode. That implicates racial equity as well, in terms of how you invest is really important. How you cut in times of downturn may be equally important in terms of who gets affected the most and who doesn't. So what are we doing to translate the good start with the IRRT, the Interim Racial Equity Rapid Response Tool, to evolve that for the January, February mid-year budget, and maybe more significantly, the full budget for 23-24? And how can we use this as a trust building exercise to actually do it and practice it in the way that we started with the American Rescue Plan? It's my question. I take it to, to any of the leaders of the Alliance and or city staff, or any of the members, or anybody who wants to. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, Mayor, thank you. It's a great question. Our partners at Race Forward are not on the call. I think Kelly is in the actual audience, but not on the call. I think this is why we're having the discussion, right, Mayor? Like, we need to know how we can communicate with you all so that we can be on one accord. I too agree that trust is built in a foxhole during these types of battles, but it is not built when you don't know if that person in the foxhole with you will also shoot you in the back. And so in order for us to really move on this, we do need to begin these conversations of what trust look like. And to your point, Mayor, I've heard you push back or talk about the difference between moving at the speed of trust and moving at the speed of light. And that's because I know that you feel pressed as seeing these things needing to move forward. I just want to say, when we're thinking about racial equity and the community that racial equity will serve, there are a lot of fires at our feet, right? This group, the Racial Equity Alliance and Council, our goal, our mission, our focus is to not focus on the fires at our feet, but to focus on the horizon ahead, right? This work is for us about sustainability, and the budget for coming up for January, like you said, February, March, is important to us. But our goal is much longer, the long game. But in order to answer your question, we definitely need to get together. We need to make space, and you've done that. So thank you for starting those conversations, Mayor. But we need to, get on one accord as a collective body and really talk about where we are with the trust issue.
Well, thank you, D'Angelo. I mean, I know that my job is to listen and learn, and I actually do learn a lot from our dialogue and conversation. And to the degree that, and I know trust is built, right? But to the degree that, how do I say this? My own experience of getting it done in the political context, more often than not, sometimes not, can also help strengthen our partnership. I just want to humbly offer that. Because, yeah, I mean, I got accused in a joking way yesterday by a colleague at a press conference of being impatient. And I plead guilty. And you know what? You're impatient too. You're impatient. Real lives are in the balance now, today, 2022. Around in our communities, look what's happening in our community as we speak in terms of gun violence and all the other things we're dealing with here. So I just want this to continue to be iterative, and for us to push one another as friends and colleagues.
Thanks, Mayor. I believe we have Kelly on the line that wanted to perhaps has their hand up from Race Forward that may want to respond. I do see my colleagues with their hand up, and I also have some comments too. So why don't we go to Kelly really quick, Madam Clerk, to make sure.
Thank you. My name is Kelly Coleman. I'm here with the Alliance and Race Forward. And I think D'Angelo perfected that, that we're working really hard together so that we can make decisions together, right? And there are a few other people on the call that we wanted to be able to join as panelists. And that's Kim Williams, Tiffany, and I think Lynn too, wanted to be pulled over. And so in terms of the questions around the budget and sort of shorter term today projects, I think that as the council is more solidified, they can probably, I think they will be sort of the body that is talking with you more. And the alliance is going to be the folks that are pushing the council, right? That the council is directly accountable to, if that makes any sense. And we don't want to rush anything, especially with racial equity. I mean, it took us a very long time to get here, and it's going to take us a while to fix it. I do think, though, that now we have something on the table, and it made a lot of sense because we're about to start the truth telling part of this, right? That it would be a good time to have an apology along with a plan. And maybe that does look like some sort of connection to what you mentioned, Mayor. But I think that we would need time as an alliance to go back to the community and get with the council in order to have some more concrete answers.
Thank you, Kelly. Mayor, I'm going to add, do we have other, I believe Kelly had mentioned that there were other folks
No, I'm
on the
done.
line
Thank
as well
you.
that we could bring up as panel. Not sure if, thank you, Madam Clerk. Kelly, just wanted to let you know that the folks you did mention, we did bring them on the panel. So if any of them would like to speak, please let us know or raise their hand. Okay. I believe Councilmember Jay Chenier and Rick, Councilmember Jennings have their hand up. Councilmember Chenier.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I guess I want to see also, this council and others have put a lot of effort into this work already. I know that we have a tremendous distance to go. There's no question about that. But I also want to make sure that we can be able to build on the work that we have done and are currently doing. Even if you look at the rest of today's agenda, we know that data is incredibly important. We know we have the cannabis racial equity study on that, and then we have some work that our staff has done around equity in fields. Those are all pieces, I think, that if we want to gain trust and build trust, that we can be using. And I want to make sure as this plan is developed, that'll go along with an apology, how these pieces fit in and we can build on them. I guess that's my question. How do you work all that together?
Thanks,
Can you all hear me?
Yes, Nia, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I was just wanted to respond to what Jay, you just had to share. I think all of that work is wonderful. I think some of it's being done without the knowledge of community. So I think that working that back into, like you had mentioned, like working this back into the plan that goes along with our apology is going to be a really important part of this, because I would imagine that community would want to know that you're working on equity in parks, right? But again, like my racial equity brain is asking which parks, which neighborhoods, which fields are being improved and for the reasons why, like what reasons are we approaching that? So considering all of those questions as we continue to move forward.
Thank you, Nia. Councilmember Chenier, you bring up a really good point. I have some thoughts on that too. I think I'll try to sum up everything after all my colleagues speak. So I think Councilmember Jennings is next.
Thank you. This is a great conversation, and I want to thank everybody for their work to date. and the work that we'll do together. You know, I wish that I heard the conversation about the 2-day workshop, and my mindset went immediately to, I wish I had been at the 2-day workshop with you to help with the planning that took place there, and to also reestablish some of the trust that's been lost along the way between elected officials and the community, and then even maybe some of us that are here at the table. And so I think, you know, as we talk about a formal apology followed by an action plan, I don't want to miss the opportunity to start right now with this group that I'm looking at right now in front of us, so that then we can start expanding to get to the larger group that includes some of my colleagues and other elected officials that are not, you know, a part of this right now. But I think for me, I feel like I got to catch up to where you are, and develop a relationship with each and every one of you, so that we can rebuild the trust among ourselves and then take that same feeling out to the general public. And so, you know, if that's part of an action plan, then let it be part of the action plan. But I just feel like I'm behind. And I have this saying that I say is, he or she who's behind in the great race of life must run faster or forever remain behind. And I feel like I'm behind the work that the Racial Equity Alliance is doing, the Racial Equity Network, Race Forward, Racial Equity Council. I feel like, you know, I'm behind, and I feel like I'm trying to catch up. And I want to catch up. I mean, I think it's important. And so for me, that means us getting in a room together and start really talking about the apology and talking about the action plan, so that we can do that work, because there's so much to do. But I think it all starts on the foundation of the apology and the action plan. And the action plan that we put together, that we formed together, so that that can help rebuild some of the trust that's been lost along the way. So I'm speaking on emotion. I'm speaking on hearing this for the first time. There's a whole lot more listening that I need to do and will do. But, you know, I'm ready to move forward with, you know, how do we get that apology out there to the general public, not just to some, but to all? And how do we get an action plan that the public can see that we're working together and start the trust building process? And so I'll stop at those comments.
Thank you, Councilmember Jenny. I just first wanted to take this moment to thank D'Angelo, Ryan, Nia, Kelly, and just everyone, the entire Alliance, just for your presentation, and really want to thank you just for the work that you have done thus far. This also isn't work, right? It's what you do in your lives. It's what you breathe. And you know, as often we hear that we have to move at the speed of trust. And I just want to remind folks that, you know, this work really began before I became on council in 2019. It was the Racial Equity Network, now called the Alliance. And, you know, all of you have really begun to set the foundation of how we should be moving with intentionality in the city. And I know one thing for sure as a young organizer is that if we want this to be transformative, we truly have to ensure that it's led by the people on the ground. And so really appreciate all of you doing this work. But I do want to add, you know, as a former organizer, now as a councilwoman, I am also accountable to our community, as well as I know that all of you want to make sure that you hold us accountable as you're elected as well. We're elected to serve this community, to serve you. We need to hold ourselves accountable to you and to the community, and especially to make sure that we're moving this work along. I think one of the major takeaway from today's presentation really is about the truth telling and the trust building. As Nia mentioned, it can and will be uncomfortable, but it's really important if we are to embark on this journey. And something that I like to suggest, I think, just given what I've heard from Councilmember Chenier and Councilmember Jennings, is that in some ways, this committee, this Racial Equity Committee, is new. We have 2 co-chairs, and we're also trying to navigate how we could work with the community in a way that's intentional, work with the Alliance and the council in a way that is truly authentic and intentional. And given that we meet only 4 times a year, perhaps we may need to meet more. I like to request, and I think I heard this also from the Alliance members as well, is that I think we're almost at the place where we can begin to really start working together. And I know that as of right now, the Racial Equity Committee agenda is often just set by our staff and Mayor Council, your office and my office. And I think moving forward for our next meeting, it might be good to make sure that we're working with the Racial Equity Council and this committee to co-create our agenda for the next meeting and future meetings. I think that's one step so that we can be in alignment in terms of the work that is happening. For example, I think we heard clearly about the public acknowledgement, but making sure that there's an action plan. And I actually believe that part of that work is part of the SCORE initiative already. It's kind of laid out in the SCORE initiative in terms of the racial equity resolution. If you look at the SCORE initiative I have in front of me, the first task is truth telling and trust building. So the Alliance and the Council is suggesting really what we should be doing first. So it goes back to us as a council too. It's actually part of our scope of work. So I do want to just let my colleagues know that we're not behind, although it does feel like it. I think we're moving, one, at the speed of trust, but also with intentionality. So I do want to share with you that the scope of work for task 1 is the truth telling, trust building aspect of it. And then developing a plan, which is part of the SCORE initiative. I think how we can move forward is, D'Angelo, because I know you are the point of contact for the Racial Equity Alliance, but working with our city staff on a meeting to figure out when we have our next agenda to make sure that we're working together on what this potentially could look like. I think the city can, I heard from the mayor, happy to do a public acknowledgement, but I also want to make sure that we're doing, that we're running this through the community, right? Is there anything that's missing? And especially the action plan. So I would like to direct our city staff, Kelly and Ami, to work directly with the Racial Equity Alliance and Council on that. And then also, as we move forward with these committee meetings, I think it's really important that we are actually co-creating these agenda with the Racial Equity Council as well. That's something that I would like to recommend. Obviously, would love to hear back from the Alliance on their thoughts on that before I fully provide the direction, because we're a team on this. I think once we do that, we can begin to have some alignment, Mayor, because I know there's other initiative happening regarding the cannabis study, regarding the dashboard. I think I do want to remind folks that, the mission of the Racial Equity Committee was to align our efforts in the city, right? And so I know there are parallel tracks happening right now at this moment. But I think the first step is actually getting staff to work directly with the council and the Alliance, making sure that we're co-creating the agenda together. So I think that would be a good first step. And D'Angelo, definitely want to hear from you and the group to hear your thoughts on that. It sounds like you're all almost ready for those conversations to begin directly with the committee.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman Revang, for all of your comments. I do believe we are ready. I like the idea personally of us helping to co-create the meeting agenda. Of course, we'll definitely talk to the rest of the Alliance members to make sure that's something that we can take on. But back to, meetings, I lifted up that we have had meetings with individuals who responded to our request. We did reach out with the help of Kelly Rivas. Each of your departments, Councilmember Jennings, we also reached out to your department as well, and we didn't hear back, and totally understand the feeling of being behind, but don't be. As Councilmember Vang lifted up, we are at the beginning of our work scope, right? And the way the agenda is set up going forward is the first piece around truth telling. To your comment, Councilmember Jennings, this won't be the last retreat, and you are definitely welcome to join when we make that invite. The Alliance definitely wants to be on one accord. We definitely want to move this in a way that's beneficial to all community members. But again, we just understand the importance of not putting the cart before the horse, right? We have to talk about the history and the trust building and the truth telling, right? And so I'll stop being long-winded. Yes, Councilmember Bang, let's talk.
Thank you, D'Angelo. And I believe we have a few hands up. We have Kim Williams, and I think Kelly hands is up, if I can see that correctly. So I think, oh, we have Ryan. So Ryan, go ahead. Thank you, Mindy. Ryan, Kelly, and Kim. Go ahead.
Yeah, Kim, go ahead. I was, Kim, Kelly, and then myself.
No worries, thank you. I just wanted to, D'Angelo kind of hit on it as well as when Councilmember Jennings was speaking, just to say that, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint, and it's going to take us some time to get there. As D'Angelo mentioned earlier, the folks that are a part of the Alliance, we've all been doing racial equity work for a long time. We live it, we eat it, we breathe it. But this is the first time we've actually all come together on one particular issue. And we as an alliance needed to some time to actually make sure we were all on the same accord. It doesn't do us service to have a lot of folks in the space when we aren't aligned, and we needed to make sure we were really aligned, had talked about what our goals, what our objectives are, so that we're speaking the same language to you as well as to each other and to the community. And so I think that's what the first part of this retreat was about, is really trying to solidify that amongst our group. But even during that conversation, we constantly talked about how we bring the city committee into the space with us and how we work together in tandem with each other. So we're very cognizant of that and making sure that we have a relationship with you all as well, and so that we can move this work. This is so important, and this is life-changing for our community, our city, and we don't take this lightly at all. We know the implications of what this will mean for everybody and change the trajectory of the lives of so many people. And so it's very important for us to do this right. When we started this work last year. And I remember the mayor saying, when we talked about how we're doing this differently, and there were some things that he mentioned about being so uncomfortable with, but he said, even at that point, I'm uncomfortable, but I'm going to sit in it, I'm going to stay in it. And so sometimes we're all going to be uncomfortable at times, but we're all committed to sitting in this and staying in it and working through all of that, so that at the end of the day, we come up with solutions that will benefit the people who need it most. And that's our goal. That's what we want to see happen. So we have opportunities where we're going to be able to pull it all together, and we're going to get there. I just think we all also have to give ourselves some grace and some patience to say it's going to take some time. And when we're feeling like we're out of the loop, that's why we have opportunities to call us. We'll come sit with you, let you know what we're doing and where we are. You can ask questions and have that one-on-one time with us too. So we are open to that. We want to make sure you all are as comfortable as well as, if we have questions, we want to be able to reach out to you all as well. So yes, I just wanted to put that out there. It's not that we're streaming ahead. It's we're trying to make sure that we're all on the same page and that we're in alignment with each other, so we can be in alignment with you.
Thank you, Kim. Ryan? Okay. Kelly?
There we go.
Thank you, council member. I just wanted to reiterate that, it's really important. And I know that a lot of us are the choir, right? But even the choir got to practice 3-4 times a week, to make sure that we're together. And so that's kind of, I think, what we were doing, or what we accomplished in the retreat. And we're going to be doing that work with you all as well, and with the council. And so I wanted to just make sure and let y'all know that I know Nora will be reaching out to try to figure out a way that a lot of us can be together in one space very soon, with the Brown Act and everything. So there's something coming soon, just FYI, so that we can share space. I know that that's happening. And I also wanted to just acknowledge the sort of racial equity isn't like something that we like accomplish a lot of the time, right? It's not like a destination. It's sort of, it's how we are, right? How we operate, how we do things, you know? It's why we do things. It's an approach, right? And it takes more time than anything, you know? And, you know, you have to have an understanding and a connection to the people who are most directly impacted by this stuff, right? And so the folks in this group right now are the people who are holding the mother's hands that are dealing with gun violence, right? In our communities. Folks have been doing it forever, you know? These folks gotta go back to their communities at the end of the day. And so there's work to be done between sort of the policy work, right? Which is really important. But even after that, you know, making sure to pin down the implementation and making sure things hit right, right? Because a lot of times that's where we miss. And I'm so excited, and thank you, council member, for suggesting that folks get with Kelly Rivas, who's great, and also me. I think that's something that really can benefit this work and help this group move things forward as well. And then some of the things too, just real quick, that we were also trying to figure out how we work, right, in that retreat, and how we work with the council, and then how the council will work with you all, and even how we work with you all, how the alliance works with you all. So, and then one last thing, the council has a meeting actually Thursday evening, their meeting. And so that's happening. Just wanted to put that out there, and I'm gonna pass it to Ryan.
Thank you, Kelly, and I won't belabor too much, but I definitely echo a lot of what's been shared, not only by the council or by the alliance members, but also by many of you all at the council level, especially Mai. Thank you so much for even, you know, thinking through those types of approaches of, right, like how do we fundamentally do things differently in terms of even building spaces and agendas where we have these conversations, right? I think that type of practical thinking around like what's the actual practices Kelly just lifted up that we're doing in a way that hasn't traditionally been done is something that helps us move forward. But also just to really drive home the part of the truth and reconciliation portion of it, right? It's very easy for us to name that these are the historical things that have happened, but it's harder to name the things that are still in place and are still happening, right? I think that's part of that work we'll be doing together to identify a name. So I think Maya lifted up, or a couple people on the call. I've been trying to take notes and keep track of everybody because it's so much great dialogue and acknowledgements that are happening. But that part of really getting deep into the relationship with community to say, hey, we recognize not only historically these harms have happened, but even in the present day, these are the things that we have to deconstruct that are happening, right? When we talk about racial equity, we have to get comfortable with naming white supremacy being deconstructed. I know that gets people, especially sometimes in our elected positions, a bit, you know, tense because of the things that it triggers and elicits, but it's also that type of trauma that the community is experiencing and isn't acknowledged that keeps perpetuating the harm. So it's really hard to move past a point of distrust without acknowledging that this is the harm that's happening right now, right? That gaslighting that occurs, that, oh, well, this isn't as bad, that occurs when we don't acknowledge those things, are the things that can hinder all the progress that we're making collectively together, right? And we're moving at that collective pace together. So I just want to lift that up as when we talk about the truth-telling part and recognizing like, here are all the ways that we could find, and having that chance to hear from community to make sure that we don't leave anything out, that it's not just in the statement that we end up crafting and comes out publicly, but then it's followed up continuously as, again, Kelly just lifted up, who are we and what is our continued approach that we lifted up. So I just really wanted to drive that home because I believe that this, not only this committee and this council, but even our alliance and our racial equity council, all have that commitment at heart. And that's just something that we have to continue to lift up and name and make sure that we're always operating in. But I just wanted to lift that up in this conversation to make sure that that's something that we hold true to as this process continues forward and we continue to deepen our own relationships.
Thank you, Ryan. Really appreciate that. I want to make sure we get a moment to go to public comment, but just really quick, So next step is that we'll have city staff work directly with the Racial Equity Alliance on co-creating the next agenda and really moving forward on task 1 of our SCORE initiative, the truth telling and trust building piece, acknowledging the historical wrong, but making sure that we have an action plan attached to that. And then just one more question to the Alliance really quick. I think something that would be really helpful, obviously, there are some folks that can tune in during this meeting to kind of give updates. But I have received questions about who's on the Racial Equity Alliance. Really excited that we have members selected for the Racial Equity Council. I wanted to ask the group on here, is it possible for us to share that? What would be the best way that you think the city can share that information? I think it would be really helpful to actually share the SCORE initiative, the members of the Racial Equity Alliance members and the Racial Equity Council members. Somewhere on the website, but wanted to make sure that I kind of touch base with all of you first. And what are your thought process on the best way to share this? Is it a community event to introduce who is part of the Racial Equity Council and members? I think for me, just making sure that we're able to communicate that broadly to the public, because this important work is happening and I want to be able to share this widely and broadly. So would love some guidance on that, and then we'll go to public comment. But those are some of the thoughts that I've just have for just next steps. So I think looking at Kelly and on me, I think we're good on next steps on the agenda and the public acknowledgement action plan. And so yeah, D'Angelo, Kelly, Ryan, if you have any thoughts on that in particular, that would be really great, because I have received questions of who's on the Racial Equity Alliance. Really amazing community members have been breathing and living this work. And I was excited to see some of the folks on the Racial Equity Council too, but let me know what you think the best way to roll this out. If you have any guidance on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, Councilmember Vang, the Alliance has been thinking about what that might look like and haven't landed on the exact way. We feel like this group is very important to the community, both the Alliance and the Council, and it needs to, have as many eyes and ears on it as possible. We also know that in doing this, we don't want to, stop the momentum of the Council or even interrupt what we're trying to do at this start with you all. But we do also understand that it's important to share, right? And so we've sent out the names of this alliance, who's on this alliance, as well as the Council. You should have that. If you don't, we can get it to you. But I do think it does. I think the Alliance believes that it does need to be formalized in a way so that the community knows that we are moving in this direction.
Okay, that sounds great. So I think the other direction I'll provide to staff is perhaps if you could work with the Racial Equity Alliance and Council on what's the best way to roll that out. I want to make sure that we're doing in a way that's authentic to the process. And so perhaps that's the second direction on me and Kelly that I would like to provide. I know many folks are excited about this work and they also want to know who the members of the Alliance and the Council is. And I think I want to make sure that we're doing this together. And so that would be my direction on that item. And then I think that's it. Do we have any, public comments? We have 2 public comments.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to remind members of the public, if you'd like to speak on an agenda item when the item begins, if you are in council chambers, please fill out a speaker slip. If you're on Zoom, raise your hand. After the first speaker, we'll no longer accept speaker slips and the raise hand feature in Zoom will be disabled. I have 2 speakers. The first is a phone number, 9211. Mr. Davis.
Hello, yes, this is Lambert Davis up to the Bay and Back Cheesecakes, and whenever I hear racial equity, I study this like I'm trying to get a degree from a university. Now, to the council, the 2 bodies that are speaking to the mayor and city council members that are there, and the city clerk, just a word of advice. When you have this type of audience in front of you, you must be on time and your technology must be tight. Because me personally, I heard a lot of noise, and that should be cleaned up before you come in front of a group like that. Now, The next thing I want to say is when you study too long, I'm from that background. When you study too long, you're studying wrong. I learned that in elementary school. Now you have someone talking about trusting them, and they don't have any background of integrity or credibility. What I think should happen is if someone is caught doing what they're doing, they should be terminated, and they should lose their job and their benefits, because if you think people who are against equity are going to trust you, then you're insane to me. It has to be an accountability, because that money at City Hall is not the staff's money. It's the taxpayers' money. Measure U, ARPA, CARES. And if they're caught doing the things you're talking about, they should be terminated. No ifs, ands, or buts. But I wouldn't trust anyone who has a reputation for having restrictive covenants, redlining, and I'm basing that on my parents who moved here in 1946.
Thank you for your comments. Your time
So you
is
got a
up.
big-
Will you make your final comment, please?
Yeah, I'm gonna pray for you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker is Michael Snell.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, staff. Thank you, Mayor, Council, everyone. Also to the body of folks that are stepping up to the challenge to continue efforts in this fight for racial equity, and just the helping, because obviously this is something that was created well before us, and it's going to take generations after us to finally rid of, to say the least. Sorry, I'm kind of caught me off guard going through my day. But what in regards to the trust, building trust, like the gentleman stated before, it definitely has to and like a lady stated earlier, it's not, racial equity and justice is not a destination, it's something that's within us. So obviously for even members on council or whatever positions, if they have not displayed that in their term, it's gonna make it more difficult to establish that trust. And so we have to make sure that we embody that in everything that we do, is racial equity, trust, and being able, like also stated before, being able to sit in uncomfortable positions in uncomfortable rooms where this conversation may not be as acceptable because of some, certain groups. They don't want to face the facts and the harsh realities. They'd rather push forward without acknowledging those harsh realities, but we can't, it's just impossible to move forward collectively without identifying and adjusting from those issues. So I want to thank those that are stepping up to this challenge. And I want to thank the officials and city members that actually take this seriously and want to push the agenda. This is a fight that's going to continue beyond our lifespan. And I'm just glad to see this work being taken seriously here in the city of Sacramento. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our final speaker is Jay Hill. Jay Hill, if you'll unmute.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, yeah, this is Jared Hill. I would piggyback on the first two or the last two speakers. My concern, I appreciate everybody. Thanks for having us. My concern becomes that while we're meeting, while we're talking at a high level, there's an active shooter in our neighborhoods. There's an active fire burning. We're not going to stand and meet and philosophize about how to put the fire out. When it's burning, we need to pick up the hoses and put the fire out, and then philosophize and all the rhetoric later on. But we need to be talking about what's an issue, and then an action that we can take to address those active issues. Our communities need reinvestment in the park and recs, the after-school programs, open these things back up, maybe start holding our community-based organizations more accountable if they mismanage funds, or the city start hiring people from the neighborhoods and as employees of the city like they used to, that ran the community centers that served as the after school programs, as opposed to trusting, X, Y, and Z nonprofit organization who are failing the communities right now. The next shooter is being born and bred right now because mom and dad work. They don't have an after school program. And so they're hanging out with the wrong crowd. That kid is 5, 10, 15 years old right now. How do we serve those youth? Focus there. Let's find one issue and then solve those things immediately, rather than talking and planning and retreating. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Chair, I have no more speakers.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone who called in. And thank you, D'Angelo, Ryan, Kim, Nia.
Councilmember Vang, I think you're on mute.
Thank you so much. Can you all hear me now? It's my first time chairing in the dais. I do apologize, trying to learn how to work these buttons. Thank you, D'Angelo, Ryan, Kim, and Nia, and the entire Racial Equity Alliance and the council, just for your work and your presentation. And I think we have some direction for city staff on next steps. So looking forward to that. And just again, really want to say thank you for taking time out of your incredibly busy schedule to do this important work that's necessary and important to move our city forward. So thank you. All right, colleagues, next item on the agenda is a status update on cannabis racial equity study. I believe this presentation will be done from Davina Smith, our cannabis manager. Is she online?
Hi, good morning. Thank you. My name is Davina Smith, and I am the cannabis manager with the City of Sacramento's Office of Cannabis Management. I am very excited, as many of the speakers previously said, that we have this committee and that exists here in Sacramento. And I'm very happy to be here today to speak with you on the work being done on the cannabis equity study. This study was commissioned to help inform future policy around cannabis equity by providing data and information on the state of equity in the cannabis industry here in Sacramento, the effectiveness of the city's cannabis equity program, and how we can improve that effectiveness in helping remove barriers to entrance into the regulated cannabis industry for those impacted by the disproportionate policing of cannabis offenses. Our contractor in this endeavor is Applied Memetics, a health and research informatics firm that has worked in the areas of equity-based research, consultative services, and public policy recommendations for the state and municipal clients. The leads on the equity study team include Dr. William Armeline and Dr. Edith Kenny, who are both researchers, authors, and experts in equity and equity research. Dr. Armeline is a founding director of the Human Rights Program and an associate professor in the Department of Sociology and Interdisciplinary Social Justice Sciences at San Jose State University. Dr. Kinney is an assistant professor of justice studies at San Jose State University, and her research focuses on social movement organizations' role in criminal justice reform. An additional lead on the study team is Brad Rowe of Rowe Policy and Media. He is a lecturer in public policy at the UCLA Luskin School of Public Affairs and an adjunct professor at the Pepperdine University School of Public Policy. He has overseen research, evaluation, and implementation efforts around violence reduction and the school-to-prison pipeline for the Mississippi Office of the Attorney General, as well as medical cannabis market measurements for both the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board and Health Canada. The equity study team has been working on surveying the current state of cannabis equity in Sacramento in several ways, including reviewing existing studies and scholarly documents and research on equity in cannabis, interviews with core members, city staff that work on cannabis projects, non-core cannabis industry personnel, and through outreach efforts to local community, cannabis, and equity organizations. Although our equity study team has been making good progress, the journey here has not been entirely smooth. When we published the RFP, we anticipated having a final equity study before the end of the year. Unfortunately, after trying for over 2 months to enter into contract with our top scoring proposer, we went through the procurement process to award the work to the second top scorer, which was Applied Memetics. Happily, we were under contract with them within a week, and they immediately started work. An additional time setback happened when the applied mimetics personnel who had been coordinating the work on the study left the company. To their credit, applied mimetics has been very responsive in getting the work going again, but we did lose about a month as the new personnel got up to speed. So although the cannabis equity study won't be ready until 2023, I do feel confident of the experience and the caliber of the equity study team, and that they will deliver a quality product that will help inform us as we move forward in this work. I look forward to sharing that study with you when it is ready, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Davina. Do I have any questions from members of the committee? Okay, no hands up. Do we have any public comment? Oh, do we have any?
Yes, I do have 2 hands raised to make public comment on this item.
Okay, let's take public comment on this item. Thank you.
The first is Lambert Davis and then Malachi Amen.
Yes, this is Lambert again. Now, I'm going to use what I just heard. I heard someone give a report about a study that somebody's paid to get in on time. But there's always some sort of, I'll call it an excuse, because if I'm paid, I have to deliver what I do. I can't talk about what I'm doing and it's coming later. See, when you're dealing with institutionalized and systemic racist practices, this is an example. What do I mean by that? Over the years, I have studied the racial equity studies at City Hall, and some of them have been 6 figures. I think one was $250,000, and they came back with the same problems that Black people know exist, including me. And what did I say? I said, you could have taken $250,000 and given that to core members. You could have taken $250,000 and given it to a Black family-owned cheesecake business. Both of us need to be on a level playing field like the other people. So I don't think the person who's coming in not on time, I think they should lose the contract because they didn't fulfill the timeline. We want the equity study now. We don't want to wait till next year so you can tell us the same story. That's what I meant by accountability. It should hurt people's pocketbooks, and then they'll get on the ball. So that's what I have to say about racial studies. You're studying too long for a reason. I'm from the background, if you study too long, you're studying wrong, or you have a hidden agenda. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker is Malachi Amen, then Michael Snell. Malachi, if you'll unmute. Malachi Amen. We'll go to Michael Snell.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Hi, yeah. So yeah, in addition to the racial equity, especially when it comes to core, the study, like the gentleman has mentioned before me, these studies they're bringing to light the stuff that we bring up as core members or just members of the community day in and day out on these meetings, on different opportunities to speak publicly. And so I guess, with this study, it's going to be a more official way of collecting data, and I guess give us some direction and GPS on how to better the overall core program. We need as much support as we can. Obviously, the after effects of the war on drugs is still running rampant. And even myself, as trying to open a storefront dispensary, the process of, even with a location that already has been approved for the exact use that I intend to use it for, it's still a very slow process. And we're trying to get to the bottom of that. And we need bodies like the Racial Equity Alliance and others as a form of counsel that's a trusted body between core members or Black members of the community and our elected officials, because we struggle to have that discourse between the two bodies. And in addition, I guess things kind of, I don't know if I was the only one, but things kind of got muted while Davina was speaking, and I had to reconnect. But I guess the equity study is being delayed, which is already kind of a red flag to some of us, because there was already a previous group that had been approved, and out of nowhere, I guess.
Your comments, your time is complete. Will you make your final comment? Thank you. Malachi Amen.
Greetings, can you hear me?
We can.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I lost my device for weighing in verbally. This is Malachi Amen, Director of the Institute for More, and we have worked since the beginning on shaping the Cannabis Opportunity Reinvestment and Equity Program for the city of Sacramento, the program and the policy. And I think what we're concerned about at this point is, again, moving at the speed of trust. There were some circumstances around, how UC Davis Center for Regional Change just kind of dropped out of the picture. And so concerned about that, but we're moving forward now, but there are some need for us to really have data that we can trust, that is supported by experts with the cultural competence and experience in racial equity. I had a chance to talk to the lead person, Paul, of Applied Mimetics, and he indicated that they don't have Doctors William Armeline and the other persons that Davina mentioned in terms of being leads of the study. And so, just kind of concerned at this point, and but hopeful that we will be able to have data that we can trust, particularly given, how the EPS study emerged and how our voices were not heard.
Thank you for your comments. Chair, I have no more speakers.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and thank you to everyone that called in. Just really one question before we move to the next item. Davina, what is the timeline for this study in particular? I know you had shared kind of just the process and how we've moved to the second awardee that's now moving forward with the study. Just wanted to know what is the timeline on this?
Yeah, so right now they're looking at the first quarter of 2023. So we want to make sure that they have the time to do all the work that they are looking to do. The leads on the study, Drs. Kenny and Armeline and Mr. Rowe, are all working on this together with the personnel from Applied Mimetics. So we want to make sure they have the time and the space to do the work they need to do, but with the understanding that we are looking for this and we are eager for this. So they understand our desire to get this done sooner rather than later. And that is the tension, right? Wanting to do quality work at the speed that we can.
Okay. Thank you so much, Davina. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a receive and file. Let's move to the next item, Sports Field Equity Lens Dashboard. I believe staff from Parks will be presenting this item.
Actually, Mike, could I say a couple words before we get started with Raymond here?
Yes, absolutely, Councilmember Chenier.
Yeah, I just want to provide a little bit of context to how this got here today. And I think our staff has done wonderful work. I'm going to come back to that. So as certainly Rick and the mayor know, and you two with a shorter time period, during budget times, I've been arguing for providing funding so that fields for young people after school and on weekends there's no charge for them. And we did this because we didn't want that to be a barrier to creating a safe place for young people here in Sacramento. We also, after a couple of years, added to that a request to look at which fields were lit and which fields weren't, with some expectations about what we would see in the community or in the communities around the city. We finally got $170,000 within the budget for fields themselves, so that replaced the costs for teams of young people to use our fields. We had a little hitch year one, but then that's gotten cleaned up, and those funds are being applied to reservations for fields for young people. But I do want to say that Raymond and his folks have really taken a huge step beyond what we were imagining in a very positive way, creating this dashboard so that we could have the data that we need to see where the investment should be. And I want to go back to kind of the list that Nia brought up earlier of questions of how the decisions are made and what fields were which and all of that. This data can provide that. And my hope when they showed me a first draft of all of this, or second draft, I'm not sure, Raymond, which draft that was. But when they showed it to me, I got very excited about two things. One was the potential and possibility to use the tool through our budget process to see where the investment should be. So which fields, based on an equity question, were most in need, which were needing quality uplifts, things like that. But then also taking the tool to another level and being able to use it for other types of things, certainly within our parks, but also beyond that. So I got very excited and asked Raymond if he would be able to present today, and work with Kelly Rivas around that as well. And Claudia Jason, who works with me in our office, has really done yeoman's work on this, supporting, I think, both YPC and our office in getting this item and this very meaningful item to be front and center as we think about how we budget. So with that context, I'm excited to see what they've got for us today. I know it's not finished, but I think this is a step along the way, and I hope everyone gets as excited as I am about this, because this is a true piece of great data that we'll be able to use as we make decisions. So thank you for allowing me to put that in a little bit of context.
Thank you, Councilmember Shanair. Go ahead, Raymond.
Great. So I'm Raymond Cosentino, Park Planning, Park Development Manager and Youth Parks and Community Enrichment. I'm here with my colleague, Brianna Moland, who's Associate Planner, and we will be going over the draft sports field equity lens dashboard. It's in a draft form, and we have a short presentation, and then we'll have an opportunity to actually kind of toggle through it and show you how it works. So with that, I'll start. So in an effort to address disparities in service levels in an equitable manner, YPC has been developing a geographic information system tool to analyze city sports fields data using an equity lens to better understand the distribution of sports fields in relation to under-resourced communities. The equity lens incorporated the following standard data sets: Cal EnviroScreen 4.1, child density ranking, and low-income ranking. In this analysis, YPC also took into account additional factors, including lit and unlit fields, quality of sports field maintenance, and the availability of restrooms and parking. The goal was to give each sports field an equity score that ranked these different variables and help determine if a particular field had a high potential to serve an under-resourced community or not. This equity score could then be used to help prioritize field capital improvements, such as field lighting and maintenance and reservation allocation to under-resourced communities in Sacramento. This would also be incorporated into YPC's future update of the Park Project Programming Guide that prioritizes new capital improvement projects. The first step in this analysis was to identify data sets for disadvantaged communities, youth population density, and account for all city sports fields. The second step was for the Park Maintenance Division to evaluate the condition of each sports field in the city and assign a quality of service score for each field based on level of maintenance service and amenities that support field users. The final step was to create a GIS equity lens dashboard that captures all associated data sets that can be used to analyze and compare the sports fields data. The sports fields equity lens dashboard is a work in progress, as has been mentioned, and currently only analyzes sports fields. However, in the future, we can analyze other amenities as well. The dashboard will be expected to include other park amenity types as well in the future. And now I'll pass it over to Brianna, who will further discuss the data sets.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brianna Moland, and I'm going to provide more of the technical details of the scoring system for the dashboard. So staff from our park maintenance division actually went out and evaluated each baseball and softball and soccer field in the city and created a matrix that gave scores for the quality of the turf, the baseball backstop, infield and outfield, and soccer goals. Points were given for fields that have amenities like parking, restrooms, lighting, and no detention basin. Those scores were combined to determine a quality of service score, which was given a range of 27 to 55. A score of 55 indicates a high quality field that most likely has amenities like parking and restrooms. In addition to the quality of service score, the dashboard also integrates other metrics like the child density ranking, which is based on the population density of children within the census tract that the field is located in. The range of scores for this metric is 1 to 10. So the closer a value to 10, the higher density of children there are in that census tract. It's also based on the Cal EnviroScreen 4.0, which is a screening methodology tool that combines many different characteristics to identify California communities that are disproportionately burdened by sources of pollution. The higher the Cal EnviroScreen percentage between 1 and 100, that means the more burdened a community is by pollution. So a percentage above 75% is considered disadvantaged under SB 535. The other metric is the low income ranking, which is a metric created using the Cal EnviroScreen score. So the score is between 1 and 10, and the closer the score is to 10, the wealthier the neighborhood. So the metrics that I just described combine with the quality of service score to create the equity lens ranking. So since this is a cumulative measure, the quality of service score has the most impact on the overall equity lens ranking for a sports field. This means that a lower quality of service score would also mean a lower equity score. The range of the equity lens ranking is 37 to 67.6. And we've determined that a field with a low quality of service score and a low equity score, plus a higher child density ranking, would be a good fit for a field to invest in for additional resources when staff is looking to improve a field, because that field would have a higher number of children around who would be able to use the improved field. So now I'm going to pass it back to Raymond to demonstrate how the dashboard actually works.
Okay, so now I'm going to share it. See if it comes up here. You should have the dashboard in front of you. Okay, so this is the GIS dashboard, and here on the upper left-hand corner, you'll see filter by district. So this is kind of a geographic filter. Right now, it's focusing on none, or this cell that says none, but you can also toggle through this by district. And as you toggle through by district, they'll just focus on the different districts. Right now, it's looking at District 2. We can look at District 7, for example. And then here on the bottom left, you'll see filter by facility type. Here, the facility types are soccer fields and baseball fields, both lit and unlit. Soccer fields is the way that we classify sports fields. So it includes, so soccer fields can also be, you can play other sports on them as well. And then here in the center, there's this column of different data sets. And so on the top two cells, you have number of facilities. So citywide, we have 210 facilities. That number is fixed, it does not change. Maximum equity lens. So the maximum equity lens you can have is 67.6. And that number does not change right now either. But then as you toggle through different districts or geographic areas, you'll notice that these other cells below it do change, and they include the average equity lens score for that district or geographic area, the average quality of service ranking, the average low income ranking, the average lighting ranking, and then also the average child density. So for example, just to give you an idea here, Council District 2, the scores are changing. And so one thing you can see about Council District 2, it has the average low income ranking is 2. So that signifies that it definitely has a low income community that's in that area. If we go over here to Council District 8 and look at some different data sets here, you'll notice that the average child density ranking here is high. It's a 7.2, and that's one of the things that's that we know about Council District 8 here. And just to kind of give you an idea, as we move through the different district cells, you can see that the averages change and give you an idea for each geographic area what the scores are. And then another way to utilize this dashboard is up top here. There's a bar, and it has different slides and or sliders. And so this one, for example, is the low income ranking. And so I'm going to put this on citywide. So if I wanted to just look at low income parts of the city, so a score of 3 or below, we can then see these are the fields that basically serve lower income parts of the city, for example, utilizing the slider tool here. And the same thing, there's a few other sliders here, quality of service score. If I wanted to see just high quality of service score fields, let's say, Brianna said that the quality of service score is between 27 to 55. So basically between 46 and 60, these are, the Sacramento's best quality of service score fields. And then you can see these are the fields that come up, for example. And then also we can look at the CES score, which is the California EnviroScreen score. And so a high Cal EnviroScreen score above 75 identifies a vulnerable community. And here we show that. Here we go. So basically, these are parts of town that have vulnerable communities, and these are the fields that are within those areas. And so we can basically toggle through this and look at different factors to identify basically fields that serve underserved communities, and also average child density as well. One of the things we want to change is add a child density slider here so that we can look at that as well. So basically, this is the dashboard, and you can toggle through this different information, but then you can also click on a particular field or park and then see the stats on that particular park. And so this is Charles Robertson Park in Council District 2. And here you can see that the lighting score is 6. So lighting score is interesting because you either have lights or you don't have lights. In this case, 6 means that you don't have lights. A 9 would mean that you do have lights. The quality of service score for this field is 39. The child tract density is 6, so that's a pretty high density. And then the low income ranking is 1.48 or 1.5. And so that's definitely a low income community. And so the equity score is 46.48 overall. And so we can basically kind of also look at individual parks and fields and just see how they rank. And I just want to identify a few other.
Let me.
Yes.
So this is brilliant. I mean, in many respects. I mean, it's just wow. I mean, I want to. And I ask Kelly sit next to me. Can I get a? Can I have this on my desk? But she says it's an iterative tool that's going. So that may not be the way to do this here. But what I want to know is I'm going through all this, and I appreciate all the detail. I'm getting a tiny bit lost as we're going through all of it, and it's okay. It's rich. But I want to know what we're going to do, staff-wise, member-wise, to apply this. That's what I want to know.
Sure. So
hold on. Oh, sorry. I know I have. Councilmember Vang and I have one very clear public idea about what we want to use this tool for in District 8. We've been very public about that. In fact, it was the subject of my State of the City address. But what is the practical application of this? What are our plans? I know what the applications are, but what are our plans to apply this? Just as we've done something quasi-similar with transportation investments in terms of the comprehensive transportation plan for city projects. What's next? That's what I would know, rather than in the few minutes, rather than continuing to go through the derivations of it, because I know I have to leave in a minute.
Sure. So, so I have to say that one of the things that we've been doing is working with our GIS division and IT to basically get all our data on GIS layers. And so one of the things that's allowed us to do is do this type of analysis and basically kind of improve our data that we utilize to make recommendations around prioritizing capital improvements, prioritizing maintenance improvements, and also prioritizing field allocation, reservation allocation of field reservations. And so that's the way this data will be utilized. We have used this something similar in the past, but we had to do it by hand, obviously, so we were limited. So we're basically going to be able to incorporate this data in something that we call our Park Project Programming Guide, which basically prioritizes unfunded projects that we basically utilize to advocate for new funding or additional funding for new projects. And then the other thing,
if I can, Raymond, for 1 second.
Sure.
And so, Mayor, I think you asked exactly the right question. And my suggestion, even though it's a little bit more work or maybe a lot more work for our staff, I think this would be a great case to work with the Alliance and or the council, whichever is the appropriate body here, to go through this data as we think about next year's budget and where deferred maintenance and capital costs are in the city with using this equity lens that can come back to the council and to staff in the council with decision recommendations.
Look, can I back that up for a moment? And I know Councilmember Chenier, unfortunately, you won't be part of the council, but I would like to, if we have a work plan for next year with the Alliance, I would love, if it's appropriate, to have this committee meet in some form of joint session, public workshop, and use this as at least one significant agenda item to do just that, to come out of it with an agreed upon joint policy direction, a set of priorities for future investments, you name it. Because this is sort of what I meant earlier, which is I want to take something that is real and that's systemic and use it to build that trust and to actually advance racial equity in a tangible fashion. I think
I think this is a great tool. It's a perfect way to build trust. Everything that we've been talking about for the last hour and a half, if you use this tool, it gets us a step in the right direction. It's not the answer, but I do think it's an answer. And again, I know that our time is short here today. I just want to commend Raymond and all of his folks, Brianna. This will win awards. There's no question in my mind.
Brilliant.
This is such a great tool to be able to use to get to the ends that we've been talking about.
Thank you, Councilmember Chenier. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Raymond. I know we're short on time. I really want to thank you just for sharing the dashboard. And I know it provides a snapshot of how well our parks are doing throughout the city in terms of from a racial equity lens. So really appreciate that. And I think that's a great idea, Mayor. I think in addition to your direction, I would just ask staff to run this through our Alliance, something that this council is supportive of, but want to make sure that they have the capacity to do so. But I do think this is a great opportunity.
It's just a suggestion,
Yeah.
right? If the Alliance, this is not my demand, if the Alliance wants to do this and work and get in, I don't know what the right term is, but public workshop together, and it's not the only, but take this good piece of work, because we've developed now the technology is brilliant, but actually use it.
And they probably
together.
have some edits and recommendations as well.
Of
So
course. No, of course.
Right, that sounds like a good direction.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I know you have to leave. Thank you so much, Raymond, Brianna, really appreciate that presentation. Next item is racial equity staff report. Is there?
Actually, we do have public comment
Oh,
on
we
this
do have-
item.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk.
Lambert Davis.
Yes, I'm commenting on racial play fields. This is an example of where I have an issue with YPSI. If you go to the Robertson Community Center, and I'm talking about people who love soccer, and you see what they installed on that property, and they call that a soccer field. What I did is I waited till all the lights, camera, the cutting ribbon, all that left, and I went out there and touched the surface. If you go there, and YPSI can give that a A+ for these young people who would be running on that, the actual surface is asphalt. The net where you kick a ball into the goal, it's metal. Can you imagine young people running in there or running on that surface? So that's an example of inequity in playing fields. And somebody got paid a pretty penny to install what's called a kit. I was in construction. That's a kit. And it's liable to hurt young people's bones. So when I hear YPSI, who has a resistance to tell us how are they spending their money, based upon what I just heard, the wealthy communities shouldn't get any money next time, and give all the money to District 2 and District 8, and you'll see improvements. But you will get voted out of office by those other districts who are very active in voting. So you got a big problem there, and it's entrenched. And for those of you who are going to fight it, in the Deep South, they used to call it deliberate speed. Now they're calling it deliberate truth. Deliberate speed means they can go at the pace they
Your
want
time
to.
is complete. Will you make your final comment?
Shout out to Mindy.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker is Barry Boyd.
Thank you and good afternoon, or excuse me, good morning. Unfortunately, I'm just coming into this meeting because it just happens to be browsing through the city website and saw that, hey, there's the Racial Justice Task Force meeting going on. If there was outreach done to notify those of us who have been involved since the inception, I did miss it. I did miss the emails. I do get emails from everything else that goes on in regards to notification for the city. I'm very upset that notification wasn't done in a manner that allowed for us to know that this meeting was happening. I really don't have much more input because I missed most of the meeting simply not knowing this meeting was taking place. Once again, for something this important, how could this continue to happen? The lack of notification for all those who are concerned and want to be a part of making a true change for which the city has been conducting itself, to which, where has been being stated, the city wants to get to a place of change. That is my comment for today. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Chair, I have no more speakers.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Just wanted to respond to that. Mr. Boyd, thank you so much for calling in. I believe there are 4 standing racial equity committee meetings that's on the calendar, but I think you're absolutely right. What I would suggest, because I know that there were actually many members that applied to be part of the Racial Equity Council as well. I'd like to provide direction to city staff, Kelly and on me, if perhaps we can have a listserv of folks who are interested in this work. While it is a standing meeting, I think it's good just to do a reminder follow-up for those that are interested in this work to be updated when these committee meetings are happening, when the Racial Equity Council is meeting, just so that folks can monitor progress and be engaged and involved. We don't want to do anything, to create more barriers. If anything, we want to make sure that's more accessible. So, Mr. Boyd, thank you so much for calling in and voicing your thoughts and insights on that. And we'll make sure to do a follow-up, perhaps an additional listserv to the standing meetings to inform folks that these meetings are happening. So thank you so much. With that, we'd like to go to committee comments, questions, and ideas. Are there any ideas or questions from my colleagues? If not, I do have one really quick, just given the 8 minutes that we have left. Last week, Council Member Valenzuela requested the mayor and city council to take on mandatory cultural competency training. Earlier this year, during a full council meeting, the mayor and I did make a request for all of our colleagues to do the GARE training that is currently happening right now in the city. However, this has been an opt-in only kind of option. I really believe that if we're going to embark on this important work, elected leaders and all of our staff should undergo training that can help council and mayor and our employees become more aware of their unconscious bias and really barriers to diversity and inclusion. I know training is just the first step. It isn't going to be, it's not going to solve everything, but it's really the first step in terms of addressing our own implicit bias. And it's really essential for us in terms of creating and maintaining a respectful and inclusive workplace. Currently, for elected officials, we actually have requirements to do ethics training, sexual harassment training. And so I think it is appropriate that we also add this as a policy. And so today I actually like to make a direction to staff to actually begin to work with city staff to develop a policy. So let me just put on record my official request. I'd like to request our committee staff to develop a policy to be adopted by council, requiring all city elected officials. And I'm also adding exempt management employees, including our appointed officers as well. I think it's important for our charter officers to also do these trainings, to undergo regular periodic cultural competency, humility, and awareness training. But one thing that I do want to add to this is that this training should be informed by our SCORE initiative as facilitated by Race Forward and the Racial Equity Alliance and Racial Equity Council. And so that is my direction to our city attorney and city staff to begin working working on this policy to bring back to the full council. Awesome, thank you so much. Are there any before we go to public comments, do we have any update for our racial equities report from our staff? Ami or Kelly?
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Councilmember Vang, and the members of the Racial Equity Committee. I wanted to announce the expansion of the Office of Diversity and Equity and introduce 2 new staff that have come on. Larissa Wall, who is now the new Strategic Workforce Equity Analyst. We also have Robert Bell, who is also our new Equity Analyst, and so they're here in the chambers, and we are excited to get to work and expand our bandwidth and all of the wonderful direction that this committee and the emerging work that will be happening. So we're very excited of our new colleagues joining us and the leadership and expertise they'll bring. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ami, and welcome to staff. Welcome. Really excited to hit the ground running with both of you, and so welcome to the city of Sacramento. Are there any public comments, Madam Clerk? Matters not on the agenda?
Yes, I have 2 hands raised. The first is Lambert Davis. Okay. Following Mr. Davis is Michael Snell.
Yes, this is Lambert. I'm going to end this based upon what I just heard. First of all, I'd like to send a shout out to City Councilman Mai Vang for requesting that people who do not have to take this quote unquote test on equity and their quote unquote unbiased, and that's illicit behavior. It's bias. It doesn't matter what you call it. You can call it unbiased or don't know what it is. It's bias. The word bias is simple. Now, from what I've heard, I see the same tactics being implemented. There's a delay. Well, while you're delaying taxpayers' money, a group like CORE is suffering because of your tactics. you don't delay anything else when it comes to funding. You make sure that funding is on time because you know what funding means when it's there and when it's not. And so that's why I say people's jobs should be on the line. If they don't opt in, they should be terminated. They should just be considered anti-equity. And if they're receiving funding to implement that, that's why it should be tied to their income and their job and their benefits. And then they will wake up. If you think somebody who's against equity, who doesn't have to opt in, is going to change without those parameters, then you're going to be wasting a lot of people's time, because institutionalized and systemic racism is embedded. People get promotions doing this type of behavior. You think they're going to jeopardize their house payments because of implicit bias?
Your comments, your time
See,
is, will you make your final comment?
This is technology.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker is Michael Snell, then Kim Mims.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, just wanted to close out. First of all, congratulations again to Larissa on her position in the DEI. I applied for that and I wanted to get that. I wanted to continue this fight from the inside. So best of wishes to that team in that department. And to piggyback off what Mr. Davis was speaking on, you know, we have to hold people accountable, especially in official positions. When it comes to this racial equity diversity front, if it doesn't affect their lifestyle, their livelihood, then we won't see the change that we're looking for, especially if they subscribe to the counter offense of racial justice and equity. And we have to hold those people accountable. And in addition to, as we progress on this agenda, having full-blown notification in every facet, because this is important. How are we going to progress? How are we going to attack the crime and stuff that we're seeing plaguing not only the affected communities of the war on drugs, but also now we're seeing the more affluent communities. You know, this stuff it's spreading, and this is a foundational issue, a fundamental issue of lack of resources. You know, you have people of communities that don't feel represented, that don't feel accounted for, and this is the results that we're seeing, the negative effects that we're seeing in these communities. This is the results. You won't see this as a trend in affluent communities where children have the resources, they have their needs, the parents have the jobs that they need to afford the help, the care, and everything. There's no traumatic stress, you know, from the environment, everything. We have to combat all of this. We have to combat all of this in all of our communities that are encompassed within all districts. It all matters. It all matters, and especially Black lives. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our final speaker is Kim Mims.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, great. Like several of the other speakers have said, this meeting is not very well publicized, so I am streaming it on our media platform, ETM Media. I've been making some comments in the chat on that, but just to give more viewers a chance to see it, because it is, like I said, not very well publicized, and unless you know what to look for, a lot of people aren't going to see it. And I see there are not a lot of people in chambers there today. Also, in terms of equity in some of these disenfranchised areas, we've been reaching out to the city council as part of a CAP City Collective. We have a co-working center out here in Oak Park, and also a building that is not operating right now in Del Paso, right on the boulevard. And as speakers before me have said, they've been making promises on equity inclusion in these disenfranchised areas for years, for like 50 years, since my dad was superintendent in the Del Paso area. They've been making these promises, and it just never comes to fruition. So I guess my question is, since we have a location, a building right on the boulevard, we've been reaching out to the council member in the District 2 area. We've reached out to other council members. What should we do to get these proposals in front of people, to get some response, to get some communication going so that we can, you know, have some kind of rapid assessment on getting some revitalization and business equity out in the Del Paso area. As I'm sure you're aware, Del Paso was, you know, from urban renewal and the construction of the Highway 16, the business center has gone way down.
Will you make your final comment?
Business objectives out in that community quickly. So I'll follow.
Thank you for your comments. I have no more speakers.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Want to take this moment just to thank all the public commenters that called in, and we'll make sure to follow up in terms of our listserv to inform the community more widely that these meetings are happening. They are standing meetings, but I do think it doesn't hurt to do more outreach as I'm looking at city staff to make sure that the community is informed that these meetings are happening. So with that, Madam Clerk, with no more comments, I'd like to adjourn our meeting at 12:03.
The way it currently stands, forced labor, slavery takes precedence over rehabilitation and public safety.
Oh, by the way, while the Biden administration gives reparations to everyone but free people, look at the billions he has run over to Ukraine.
We don't have black grocery stores because if you think about it now, just to get in that supply chain, it's almost unheard of.
They don't want the truth to get out. Okay? I don't want to know what my family did or what all these people did and all this stuff like that. Okay? You read that 500-page report.
There's this thing called white superiority and black inferiority. That mindset allows all of the behaviors that we've seen across generations, allows for the construction of these policies and practices and systems and structures that continue to oppress us. This is not a handout. This is a debt that is owed.
You know, Allensworth was like the internet of his time in 1904, 1905.
The total black population in California is about 2.6 million, and then of that, the descendants compose about 2.2 million of that. So California, with a multi-billion-dollar surplus, can absolutely afford to satisfy the international terms for reparations, beginning with compensation.
Any financial obstacle that exists that impedes the success of increasing financial prosperity needs to be dealt with and eliminated.
No matter where we've been, no matter what part of this fight we've been in, we've been harmed, and we've had harm done to us specifically.
When I got to Los Angeles, this was some of the worst segregation I'd ever seen. And remember, I'm telling you, I'm from Mississippi.
Because as you can see, I'm giving you broken history right now, you know? But I had to give it to you guys today. I said, no, I got to show them this because it's so precious and nobody really knows about it.
Black people don't have that kind of luxury. Our historically black communities have been redistricted multiple times.
Now listen, if you can't handle the TR roof, don't tune in.